Yep. Are live.
We are live. Let's come back to our seats. Okay, we've got a motion. All right.
I move that the chair is authorized to expend up to $10,000 from the budget line 8210-10 immediately for the purpose of providing to the LNC a legal brief on our trademark rights.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that the chair is authorized to expend up to $10,000 from budget line 8210-10 immediately for the purpose of providing to the LNC a legal brief on our trademark rights. Any further discussion? Probably not. Because it's executive session. Okay. I believe it would be in order for us to go to a roll call vote.
Mr. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Mr. Duque,
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Mr. Penke,
Yes.
Mr. Agopian.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nana.
I will abstain.
Mr. Nikela,
Yes.
Mr. Rupa,
Yes.
Mr. Tunevich,
Yes.
Mr. Watkins.
Yes.
Madam Chair, it's 14 yes, 0 no, 1 express abstention.
Okay, the motion passes. Next item on our agenda is potential policy manual revision, Ray CRM by Nana.
All right. So.
How many minutes,
Get the motion up on the
15.
screen. This motion was, or this policy manual amendment was submitted to me by Penny McMahon, the chair of Indiana. And due to some unfortunate circumstances, he planned on giving me a revision before we got here. I never got the revision. So this is the motion right now. I don't think there's a snowball's chance, if you know what, of it passing as stands. So I have some edits that I could suggest. As I said earlier, I don't anticipate us passing anything in this motion. My intention is to signal to the states that we care about what they need and that we are going to find a way to incorporate their wants and needs into our roadmap. Because it's obviously, from a national perspective, crucially important that we do what we need to do on a national level, but the states cannot feel like we're only doing what national needs, because this tool is supposed to work for both of us. Now, a lot of the reason why we're having to find additional reasons and additional ways to get creative with the project in terms of national is because we just switched off of Razor's Edge that was doing some things for us that City was not already. And it's not that City can't do those things in the future, it's just that it doesn't right now. And there are needs that the staff has, and I want to make sure those needs are met, but I also want to make sure that the needs of the states are met. So my suggestion to workshop this would be that the top portion there would say the city CRM committee shall, in conjunction with staff, be responsible for the city CRM system hosted by the party.
Wait, hold on. In because nothing's been moved, so you're moved this. So in conjunction with staff, you're taking out be solely.
Yes.
It'd be responsible.
Shall, in conjunction with staff, be responsible for the city CRM system hosted by the party specifically. Developing a prioritized list. Developing would become the word suggesting. That's the only edit for that one. Number 2, I would delete the word directing and replace it with monitoring and assisting with. Yeah, monitoring and assisting with overseeing. With oversight. Oversight of, yeah, sorry. And then that's all for that one. Number 3, maintaining would become uncovering.
Uncovering.
Discovering?
Uncovering.
Uncovering sounds.
We don't want to uncover volunteers.
Yes.
Number 4 and number 5, I think, are okay to stay as they are.
Okay, so this motion is gonna need a second. And then I have a couple of suggestions.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I am gonna say that this could also potentially be an IS subcommittee.
Okay.
Just throwing that out there.
It wouldn't be a subcommittee, it's a subordinate, because the important aspect of this is the fact that it has members that are not on the LNC. And that those members are specifically elected by the state chairs and not by the LNC.
I'm not gonna tell you exactly how it would roll out, but I'm referencing a previous conversation we had about giving committees authority to have subcommittees. That's all. Okay, so let's go to Mr. Nana so he can speak to his motion, and then we're gonna go.
So
to
I
Mr.
pretty much already spoke to it, and I guess the intent of the motion. I would push back against it being a subservient committee to another committee. I believe it does need to be a standalone committee. Now, what I want to hear is staff's opinion on the motion as it stands now, and how we can finesse this to be acceptable to both staff and the states. This is like a starting point. And I've taken out some of the more strong language from it. So I would love to hear from both Lainey and Andy and even Drew, how you would do this. Knowing that I want there to be a committee, how is it going to be the least stressful on you guys, which I kind of tried to do that, but.
Okay, so if there's no objection, we're gonna hear from staff, but the way you phrased your question was a little bit loaded. Do you want their honest opinion?
No, I want their honest
Okay.
opinion.
Yeah, I was like,
I
you're
want
like,
their
so
honest- okay,
I'm
no,
doing
okay.
this thing
Well,
to you.
let me rephrase. I want their honest opinion, but I also want them to try to meet me in the middle if possible.
Okay.
Because I do not think states, specifically the ones that are frustrated right now, are going to be happy in the long term if we don't eventually do something like this.
Awesome. I'm gonna jump in and then I'd love to turn it over to Andy. I think that the way you framed this, Mr. Nana, gives us something to work with, which is that states are looking for a signal from their National Libertarian Committee that their needs are being taken into account, right? Here's what I would like to do if this was not even being discussed. In fact, I'll tell you this is something we've been hoping to do, but I feel like everyone here can admit there's been a lot of rumors and discussion and concern and speculation, which I feel like in an effort to be reassuring, and we've actually maybe made them worse by not saying that much. I'll speak to that in a second. We've already spoken to everyone that we're going to work with a contractor whose primary purpose as a vendor is to help teams leverage city CRM to the best of their ability. They have some experience with other CRMs, but often only insofar as it will, work with cities. So they're extremely incentivized to help us give us a potential future contract that they can fulfill to improve upon city. This is our plan A, right? So we've already spoken about that yesterday. Here's some things we haven't spoken about. As a part of any requirements gathering process, that's a technical term, and that means basically ask people how they'd like to use a tool. You don't ask them directly, what should we make in this tool? What you're saying is, what are you trying to accomplish so that we can get after how we solve that? We also have a lot of volunteers and power users of City who have ideas because they're actually technical people and they can give us a second layer of advice, right? We'd love to do that across the country and gain a lot of perspective from all the different types of users. So what I'm picturing is state chairs, membership directors, fundraising directors, political directors, and the people who work with their teams. And depending on how things go with candidate support in this voter gravity tactic, we might even want to think about candidates as another constituent. In addition to that, we have needs at national, and as you very eloquently phrased, we've been relying on other CRM to do that. So there's going to be some, not even growing pains, but we need to actually build the functionality within City to do that. So holistically, I think we need to go countrywide to all of the different stakeholders and capture their requirements. On top of that, there's a third thing I think we can do, which is there are a lot of people who are passionate about this tool and the direction. If they would like to have a special layer of involvement in those decisions, I would love to have them be some kind of advisory board where we can go to them for discussions. What I'm nervous about with this is that all of the same things can be accomplished just by the way that we go about this. And in fact, this is something, those 3 plans I've been talking to you about, we've been going very slow and very cautiously because we don't want to spook anyone. Because I feel like there's a situation where some members are concerned about the direction of our CRM. And then we're worried if we go ask them things like, what are your fundraising needs? Or how is Civi serving you today? They might interpret that as, oh my God, they're going to get rid of Civi, which it couldn't be further from the truth, right? So what we're trying to do is figure out what people's needs are so that we can serve them. And that's the only reason why this hasn't happened so far. One quick last thing, because you asked me a direct question, I'm going to hand it over to Andy. What I'm nervous about with this, we've been speaking about for every committee, not just this one area, about who's on first, right? Like what are roles and responsibilities? I'm concerned that this is going to get into a situation that Ms. Harlow's mentioned earlier, which is we're making a camel because the committee is trying to design a horse, right? So I hope we don't get into that issue. I would love to really just do the normal process that any company would do when they're building a product, which is ask its customers, because it cares about helping its customers, what it is they need, build things, experiment, have an open dialogue, have good communication about what's coming. That would be my preference. So I'm going to yield to you. If you got any comments?
So my role is not so in tech companies, they divide roles into leads and individual contributors, right? Individual contributors are people who don't have anyone beneath them and who aren't responsible for like figuring out requirements. They are getting directives on what to do and implementing them, right? So those individual contributors in a company only have to worry about like the raw metal technical problems, right? When you're a director, you have to navigate organizational complexity and be able to the big part of the job is being able to understand and translate organizational needs, navigate organizational complexity, and make sure you're putting out a good product at the end of that. I would worry that adding another layer of organizational complexity is only going to make it harder to do the things that need to be done. So when times are if we agree on things, when we agree on things, the way that this the way that this is structured now, I would do nothing but welcome it, because more volunteers is always great. I am very good at what I do, but I'm 20 years old, right? So the more there is an element of having advisory people is valuable. Good qualified opinions I'm always happy to get and take into consideration, right? But it's when we disagree, right? So the way that this is written is, it doesn't seem like they actually if I have working on this stuff every day, come to a conclusion about a situation, what needs to happen, and I have a good argument, or have what I think is a good argument for why it needs to happen, it doesn't seem like they would have the authority to prevent that anyway. So I don't see how this, for the good times, we don't need it. And for the bad times, I don't see how and the bad times just meaning I disagree, staff disagrees with the committee. I don't see how it does anything but add another layer of organizational complexity to getting to an answer. Because I have to imagine that most of the kind of things that we're going to disagree on are things that the LNC would be voting on anyway, not things that are solely within my power to change.
Okay, we need to go to Justin Blankenship.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
So another big thing is that successful organizations run in pyramid-shaped hierarchies, right? Where responsibility and authority are like handed down in chains, right? And you can clearly point to the people below you and the person above you. And so when you have an issue with certain things, it's easy to identify why that went wrong, right? I would also not want to be in a managerial position where I am responsible for managing this product, but not able to act with the autonomy to do what I actually think is best. So those are my two things. I think that we want to, this like creates a like winged out organizational hierarchy where we're like creating multiple layers of people that are responsible for things. We want it to be very direct and clear, and I think this gets further.
Okay, Mr. Blankenship?
Briefly, I will disagree with you a little bit when we come to theories of public administration. There's more than just constitutional, there's discretionary and collaborative. We're not going to get into that today. But I will agree with you. I think you're persuasive on many of your other points. I also, and for the record, I think your edits do make this significantly better. I know given the circumstances that Evan went through, he was not able to contribute further. I really would like Evan's contribution to this, to see what his changes would be because of that. And I know I hate to do this to you all. I would move to table this until our next meeting so that we can get Evan's input prior to making any decisions.
Point of information.
Yeah.
Which meeting?
Our next virtual meeting, Zoom meeting.
Okay. Mr. Nana?
I just wanted to make one quick comment, and I'm sympathetic to the whole pyramid example you just gave. Originally, the way this was moved, or set to be moved, it felt like it put this committee at the top of the pyramid. And I was sensitive to the fact that that might not be a workable situation for staff. So this is my way to at least not have us at the tip of the pyramid. And to be honest, I mean, this is a really complex thing that we're trying to navigate through here. But yeah, no, I think we should table it.
Okay,
And
I'm
Does it
getting
have
a
a second?
switch.
Yeah.
You mean postpone definitely
postpone definitely
to our
to
next?
our next virtual meeting.
Yes, that.
Okay, has it been seconded?
It was second.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to postpone,
Sorry, my
one second. It's
Time,
been
Madam
moved
Chair.
and seconded to postpone this motion to our next online.
So our next one would be May. We don't have one in April because it's within 30 days of an in-person meeting.
We probably will. Sorry, guys.
Oh.
That would require a motion, but
Yeah, I'm not doing it yet. Okay, so as of now, that's gonna be in May. We need to get through, we have 9 minutes. So if you guys don't object to me asking, staff for just a little bit more input, it's gotta be super fast.
So something to consider for next time. Something that I like would be more than amenable to is if we could like do something like this, but more of their role would be like having some kind of criteria by which like I'm giving them updates and they're not like providing feedback because it's causing a layer between us and LNC, but are capable of deciding which issues should be LNC votes and what I am like, what they're comfortable with me just doing on my own. And I think that accomplishes a
Something
lot
you'd be
of it.
comfortable with. I think the states would be happy to hear that.
So that's, I'm not trying to make sure that they're not considered in the situation. I'm trying to make sure our organization operates as effectively as possible. So that's it.
Okay, okay, if it's okay with everyone, I would like to go to a vote so that we can at least address the next sentence, but yes, it's okay. So that we can at least address the next item on the agenda. Is there any objection to going to a vote?
well, is there any
No,
objection to
there's no
postponing
objection
it?
to the thing.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Postpone.
Is there an objection to postponing it?
We don't need to vote.
We don't need to vote on it. Hearing no objection, going once, going twice. All right, no objection, it's postponed. Okay, we have 8 minutes for Mr. Duquesne, who has been waiting patiently, and
A full discussion.
is
That
that
should be
the
fine.
tail end?
That should be fine. Shall I go?
Yes, you shall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, LNC. February 26th, Ms. Harless and I exchanged a few emails in which I requested time on the agenda for this item. 15 minutes is ample, frankly, because as I noted in the emails, I'm wanting information on what specifically requires us to do all of our most nitty-gritty, sensitive conversations, even sometimes minutia, on the public list. Ms. Harless informed me that the interpretation of the bylaws,
Well, and
715,
and I've got more information on that too.
actions and motions, it is specifically its custom that is the interpretation that everything should be discussed on the public list. I'm stating my intent to learn how to change that custom. And the reason for that is that I don't believe that our communication habits on the public list are a benefit to our ability to operate effectively. I think that, for one thing, more than we realize that we discuss on the public list or are required to discuss on the public list per our custom, is sensitive strategically to what we're doing. We are in the habit of calling for executive sessions when we want to discuss party strategy. A lot of what we discuss or should be discussing as a board really is part and parcel with our strategy. And that's not to say that we wouldn't still, when we take actions, whether or not that is synonymous with motions, that will still be public. We'll still have a public list. My intent is that we keep a public list and that we, as we've been spending this time building trust among this board to communicate with each other at a higher level, because we've definitely received feedback from various board members that they want more communication, and I want that too. And we don't want to do it where, as I put it before, the sausage is being made in full view, and it's quite
It's not
disgusting, mainly thanks to the unhelpful participation, frankly, of some of our members. I don't want to disparage every great member of ours that spends their valuable time keeping up with what this body is doing. A non-zero number of those members engage in what, it's been brought to my attention, this term, you can go to Urban Dictionary, and it's quite instructive. Concern trolling. We have trolls inside of our party, outside of our party. They do concern trolling where they're just frequently, all the Facebook groups, I'm not there, I don't care what they say, okay? So anybody who has an issue with me wanting to change and improve how the LNC board communicates and doing more communication and doing more of it, frankly, privately, and continuing to do our actions and motions transparently in public, you can take it up with me. And you can, if we need to do some kind of vote, if we need to codify it policy manual wise or otherwise, you can take it up with any of us that vote yes, because we're trying to serve you, members. Thank you. We've been building trust, and we can build more trust by having better communications. We're building tools for that. I think that it could be a mixture of private emails as opposed to on the LNC business list. And it could also be perhaps part of our new suite of technology that we're looking to utilize. And I'm talking specifically about going from Google Suite to the Microsoft 365 and that whole suite of tools. What else is there to say about this? Karen Ann, or Ms. Harlos rather, mentioned that it's possible that the bylaws committee may propose bylaws that more firmly entrench required transparency, and I will lobby hard against that. And between now and our national convention, we're under no obligation to try to comport ourselves with bylaws that don't exist.
Okay.
That's it. That's part of the time.
Jump in.
Okay. I gave that initial information and said I would do more research. And I have done more. That was my initial impressions. That's probably 80% to what I finally came to after doing more research, but that isn't entirely. I put in the one note all of the policies that are explicit on this. And I spoke with people who were on the bylaws committee who specifically passed bylaws Article 715. where it says the National Committee and all of its committees shall conduct all votes and actions in open session. It's obvious that votes are not the same thing as actions because they're two separate words in there. But the sentence doesn't end there. And so originally I was like, well, I think actions probably by custom means our discussions. But the second part of the sentence says executive session may only be used for discussion. So to me, if you read now, this is my, after doing further research and thought on it, I think the only coherent way to read Article 715 is that the actions it's talking about there is discussion. But I want to give everyone a bit of a history lesson here for a moment. A lot of people might not know what happened in 2014. I'm not saying this to raise personalities. I'm saying this to just give a history lesson. A very dark horse candidate became a very popular national chair. That dark horse candidate was Mr. Sarwark. Mr. Sarwark became a very popular national chair because he opened up the discussion list. Membership hates secrecy. And what was happening before that, and I'm just going to be very frank with you. If anyone here is planning on rerunning and you're going to be against secrecy, you're not going to get reelected. I'm just being, because it was a riot in the party. However, I actually do think that bylaw does require it. And also when you go to electronic mail ballots, boards and committees may transact business by electronic mail. Business includes crafting the motion, debating the motion. It is not just voting. That word is much more, much broader than that. So, you know, there is a bit of custom. I do think there's a bit of bylaws interpretation, but another history lesson. Prior to 2014, there was an LNC member, I'm pretty sure I know who it was, and I'm not going to out them, who just took every conversation and published it on a blog out of principle. And I actually do not, and no executive session stuff, just the regular stuff that they felt members needed to know. And I have to be honest with you, I don't blame them one bit. I so respect Mr. Duque, but I will oppose closing our discussions with every fiber of my being. I ran on transparency. I believe on transparency. Our bylaws give us the opportunity for things that really do. I'm not of the Star Child school that thinks everything needs to be public. The fact that it says executive session can be used for personnel matters, contractual negotiations, litigation, or political strategy regarding confidentiality, I think gives us the flexibility we need. We're a political party. We're gonna have trolls. To me, that's the job we signed up for. The job we signed up for is that we're gonna have people be really crappy to us on social media. And I say we need to pull up our big girl panties and move on. That's just my opinion on it. But throughout my years on the LNC, very respected members have disagreed with me and would absolutely agree with you. One of those esteemed members is Alicia Mattson, who I respect so highly, and she would completely agree with you. So this is no personal thing. This is a stylistic thing, but I'm just saying where my line in the sand is that I am a transparency person, and I ran on that.
It's 6:01, by the way.
Yep, it's 6:01. So I don't mean to cut anyone off, but we're out of time. How's are they gonna come and sweep us out?
I don't think we'll get kicked out. Technically, I think we're,
Or are we
they've
gonna
been really
get
chill. They've been
charged more money?
not that I know of. Let me go confirm.
Is there more on the agenda, Madam Chair?
No, this is it.
Well, let's just go home
Move to adjourn.
Worry not about the reservations.
I don't, he just told me personally, that he doesn't expect a motion to come out of this.
No,
Right.
people had their hands raised for discussion.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering
Mr.
if we
Blankenship?
Yeah, just very briefly, I just wanted to say I agree with everything Ms. Harlow said completely. And if so, it were to be required to have it in the bylaws, I would fully support bylaws for you to do so.
Madam Chair, there's just one thing I forgot to say. With this weird interpretation of what does actions mean, because it is vague, if we were to pass a motion that said we're going to do more things in secret, 100% guarantee you we would be appealed to the Judicial Committee the next day. And I don't think we want that PR.
I mean, what is-
I'm just saying,
It's okay, hold up.
That's a characterization.
Mr. Chinyevich.
I'm sorry if I mischaracterized you, Mr. Duque, I didn't mean to.
Thank you.
I think that with some time after this meeting, there is certainly an opportunity for a way forward. I'm certainly sensitive to our tradition of transparency. Some would say over transparency in our dealings. By the same token, I recognize that as a business organization as well as a political organization, we have an inherent need for a certain amount of privacy in our activities for no other reason, for the same reason as our corporate brethren would have, and that is to protect that information from our competitors. You know, those R's and B's and people who don't want us to succeed. So whether it is a gentle tweaking of policy, whether it is specific recommendations to the bylaws committee that will help to facilitate something, I believe there's a middle ground that we can find. I'll just leave it at that.
So, whatever happens, I would like to see it facilitate more discussion because, as you all know, I am sometimes less inclined to communicate sensitive things to you because I don't want to be perceived as doing something secretive. And so then we end up going to a bunch of meetings when the meeting, this could have been an email, you know, that's the reality. Mr. Nana?
Madam Chair, Mr. Duque said I misrepresented him a little bit, and I don't want to have done that. Could I please have him correct what I might have misstated out of respect?
Thank you, and I apologize that I was a bit rash in saying that. What I merely was trying to convey is not a desire for secrecy per se. It's merely that when we discuss strategy, a lot of what we discuss outside of actually crafting or debating or passing motions really intersects with our strategy. And it's not a desire for secrecy. It's merely a desire to be able to operate.
Perhaps the strategy is broader than some of us initially thought.
So, I am inclined to agree with Ms. Harlow's for the most part, but I'm also sympathetic to what Mr. Duque is saying. And I think that, so I think most of you are probably familiar with sunshine laws, right? Most of us are in favor of sunshine laws for the government. We should operate in a similar way without a mandate that we conduct business in an open session at all times. Like, so if we were to just turn the camera off, discuss a motion, and then pass a motion, I don't think anybody here would think that's okay.
Sure.
That would be what I would perceive it being if we were workshopping and discussing motions before they made it to the list, and then simply on the list voting yes or no on motions. And I don't know if that's what you mean by making these changes. I'm just saying I don't want to see us get to that point.
Dustin and Anna compared us to the government.
I think we should be better than the government.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Duque and then Donovan.
That's something that I'm failing to communicate is that part of my motivation here is that we are not a government. You know, we're not public officials. We're explicitly against initiating force. So we want to enforce transparency on government officials, and we want to utilize transparency for ourselves to have the best relationship possible with our members and donors in a way that does not make it impossible for us to achieve our goals. And we're not, and more or less, I feel strongly that we are not, it's not our duty to maintain a level of transparency in the way that city council members or public officials have to, because they're taxing us and they're using force against us. We're, like others have stated, we are a nonprofit. We can be very entrepreneurial and basically strategic and operate something like a business and not let it be so easy for our enemies, you know, to undermine confidence in our organization.
Yeah.
1 second, time check.
It's 6:07. We checked and we have her until 6:30, so we should be done by 6:25.
Aha, you can keep arguing.
I don't really want to.
Yeah, hold on, Mr. Pankey and then Mr. Ford.
I just wanted to make the point that we should really disambiguate in this case, having a discussion and conducting business and dissemination of information. Because dissemination of information, like what the chair needs to tell us about what's going on in the party, should be free flowing and should generally be, you know, we should be holding it in confidence by default, but it's one way. It's not discussion. It's not us rolling into different things, right? Is that if you're like, well, we got this thing going on, unlike a private discussion list or any type of private forum where we're interchanging, and which would be determined as, you know, a lot of people have big problems with us doing a big interchange like it's a meeting, but that's totally different from, you know, either staff or the chair or somebody as an officer disseminating information to us about what's going on in a totally one-way scenario. So that way we have knowledge of these things, and then when we want to discuss it, we call meetings or hold other public communication to do so.
Okay, so we're gonna go to Mr. Ford, and I'm gonna have a comment, and then we're gonna go to our secretary.
Let me go. I completely understand your perspective, where you're coming from, and I get a lot of your frustration. But we are the Libertarian Party, so we should be holding ourselves actually to a higher level of accountability, a higher level of transparency than government, private business, literally anyone on the planet. And at times that may be painful, but we are the party of principle. And I would just argue that we should be as open a book as possible.
I think that perhaps something we should consider when we switch communication tools is that we become a little bit more comfortable with private discussions of legal issues and political strategy. And ultimate decision making should maybe still take place in a meeting. But if there are all of these areas where it's appropriate for us to have private conversations, and it seems like none of us are doing that because we're all a little gun shy and afraid of coming across as secretive, that's probably like not healthy, and we should have a little bit better faith in ourselves. At the same time, I'd like to be more in control of the narrative of the LNC. That would be great. I also acknowledge that, you know, people are going to say what they're going to say, but we can still have like the appropriate conversations confidentially, I think. So I'm open to discussing that a little bit more.
Well, crap, I know what I was going to say. First of all, again, I feel terrible if I misrepresented you in any way, Miguel, because that's not what I want to do, because I know this is a very emotional topic and people can easily go, oh, you're just a terrible person. And I don't think that of anybody. I wanted to clarify what I said before, because I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding. One-on-one, LNC members are going to talk to each other one-on-one, or, you know, few people on an email all the time. There's not a thing we could do about that, and I'm not arguing against that. When I say conversations need to be transparent, except for the things that the bylaws say that we can keep secret, and I like using the word secret because it reminds us that's what it is. I don't like using the word confidential. I use the word secret. I don't mean it pejorative. I mean it to keep us in line, kind of thing. I mean the full LNC. Whenever the full LNC is discussing something, I think it needs to be public. So if Miguel and I want to have a discussion about a motion we're planning together, do I think that needs to be public? No, we're workshopping something. But the minute we bring it to the whole LNC to discuss, that's when it needs to be public.
Okay. If there's no objection, I'm going to call on our executive director.
I don't think we'll have time for it today. I think it's something that ironically we should discuss further behind the scenes, which is kind of an issue with this exact topic. I would love to understand what everyone's appetite is for staff communication with the LNC, with committees. It seems clear that a lot of one-on-one conversation is encouraged. I find that we've had a cooling effect with the current interpretation of things being requested to be secret, where we only talk to people one-on-one, and it has an unintended consequence of leaving LNC members out of it, either because there's not enough time in the day. There's one of me, there's 23 of you. I literally could not reach all of you if I wanted to in a week. I would just love to make sure we are actually not only being transparent to members in terms of what we want to accomplish for them, what our intentions are, what's getting decided, and to do all of the bylaws, votes, and discussions as needed here, in public. But there's a lot of other things that go into running an organization well, and I'm worried that we're sacrificing productivity and collaboration because we're trying to do everything in front of members. So whenever we're able to have this discussion, I'd love to figure out how do we want staff to be a part of this so we're in line with the appetite.
Mr. Hagopian.
So completely grateful for Karen Ann's last comment because I think that assuaged and handled all my concerns, which is I think there are certain types of communication, meaning small groups or one-on-one, that obviously should continue to go if we want to have efficient board action. I think though the problem is the way it's written is every single LNC is going to read that differently. People on the LNC are going to read that differently. We may want to consider a SOP development where standard operating procedure development, where it's like, this is the type of communication that you can have. This is the type that goes on the board. This is the type that is executive session only. You know what I mean? And just make it clear. And then we pass it and everybody knows, because too often we try to have a discussion and then somebody says this is inappropriate, and then it turns into, somebody gets offended. Well, that's not how I understood it. But well, that's all silly. Let's just make the rules and then agree to them and move on, in my opinion.
Mr. Blankenship.
Yes, I would first reiterate, we are a member organization. And to quote Laney, who I think made a very good point, if we move too far in the opposite direction, we run the risk of having a cooling effect on our communication with those members. What we feel we can or cannot share with the members, because then so many more parts of the conversation become, to use Karen Ann's word, secret. And I think we really do ourselves a disservice to the members by doing. I agree with Mark 100%. There are things from a business strategy perspective that we can meet in a middle ground, but I just urge caution in how far we want to push this, because there are repercussions that can roll down the hill.
Well, I heard the chilling effect comment was related to staff's communication with us.
And I'm saying on the other side, if we move too far the other direction.
Yes,
Absolutely.
there's both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's already been a little bit of the case, and I think it will help me communicate more effectively if we, within reason, have some behind the scenes chit chat about things that are legal and so on and so forth. There's one item left.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Mr. Nana actually had his hand.
Oh.
I just want to make sure if we move to adjourn, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this. Here, according to Roberts, if we move to adjourn now with this still going on, it automatically gets put on our next agenda.
What's
There's
this?
nothing going on.
Well, I guess, there's no motion.
There's
There was no
motion.
motion.
Discussion only.
Good
Action.
job.
Forget what I said.
All right. Any objections?
And
All right. We are adjourned, and now we are going to have some announcements, and we're going to learn about dinner.
Sweet. Okay, we'll keep this really short. So for dinner, reminder, we're going to Urban 360. I'm going to call the restaurant so they know we're coming late. We're serving pizzas. I'll see you there. It's a short walk if you want to come. Totally optional if you want to join. And then for tomorrow morning, we've got an 8 a.m. ADO Scrum, sort of less of a training and more like a WALA, so people can experience what that is. Staff is figuring out what the best location is. If people would RSVP, that will help us find the right meeting room. I don't think we have this room tomorrow. And the rest of the day, what we're going to be doing is Andy, Drew, and I will be using time together to build